All right. Okay. So now we're recording. Okay. That's good.
So
Okay.
I'm baking from Nevada. So I am a good friend of your neighbor Nancy's.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Welcome.
it's a small world.
Yes, it is. It's a wonderful world, especially with biscuits in it. So,
Uh,
Charmaine, I would love to know, you obviously grew up eating black cake, correct?
I did, but I had never eaten a commercial black cake until my
Mm,
book was about to be published, and someone in London, Doreen's Rum Cakes, I'll give her a little plug,
good.
started putting together little promotional black cakes in the UK to share with people who were reading the book. And I had never, because my mother made a legendary Jamaican rum pudding. She was Jamaican, a rum cake in the US. And funnily enough, in Jamaica, I might have had it once, but mostly I didn't.
Mm,
Whereas in the US, whenever there was a wedding or a holiday time, the end of the year, my mother would make this, and she was legendary. She would cook the cake in kind of a Dutch oven system. So the
oh,
tin with the batter would be put in another tin with water and cooked for 2.5 hours or so.
wow.
And they were wonderful. And I did not set out to write a book about black cake or with a cake in it. But I was writing a story with these two girls in the Caribbean living in the past in the 1960s. And so it was natural that the cake would pop up. And it popped up with the name black cake, which actually is used in some countries, but not all. And as soon as that came up in my imagination, the possibilities that this recipe offered as, again, a language used in storytelling
Mm,
sort of blossomed in my mind. And right away, I knew that the words black cake would be in the title. I saw the cake coming up again in the plot. But more importantly, it became a symbol of both the wonderful things that food can do for us when we have access to food and we have the privilege of preparing food for other people. Food represents celebration, togetherness, nurturing, as you mentioned, Anita.
mhm.
Nurturing is very important in the Peach Seed, your novel. But this particular recipe also spoke to the social, geographical, economic history of
Right,
the Caribbean region. So a recipe that came from the European region to the Caribbean region by way of colonialism. The fact that key ingredients in this recipe that made it Caribbean, that took it away from the European region, the rum and the dark brown cane sugar, those were made popular and possible by the cash cropping of sugar cane.
yeah,
And that was made possible and lucrative via forced labor, the enslavement of people to make. So this recipe represents everything. It represents history and what happened in the past and how
right.
often you really can't separate the good from the bad, how you
Mm-hmm.
can separate one region or one culture from another with a clean cut of a knife. So I loved that, but I didn't sit there calculating this.
Right,
The brain and the mind, the mind has everything we need um, to fuel the imagination. And then later we can add some research. but
yes, yes, yes.
but it came up by accident. How about you and the drop biscuits? I'm curious, as you wrote, you're writing about a family that is very grounded in the
Mm-hmm.
Americas, in
Mm-hmm.
Georgia. And most of these people are connected to one another, either by family or past,
Right.
relationships, friendships. So why the drop biscuits and why are you so attached to them?
They take me back to my childhood growing up in Southwest Georgia, Albany, where the book is set. And my dear Auntie Kurt, she was my mother's sister. And we would spend summers with her down in Bainbridge, Georgia, Camilla, Georgia, down in that area near the Florida line. And Auntie Kurt was just, she had a garden. She She put up a lot of vegetables, what you would call canning. You put them up, put up vegetables. And she loved to fish. So we would just have these amazing meals. But what stuck with me were her drop biscuits. And I guess she taught me how to make them. I don't even remember. I remember struggling for years and years and not getting it right. But the biscuits just transport me all through the writing of the peach seed. Because I was several miles away from the place I was writing about and pining away for that place, my home, the food just would help connect me and ground me with those folks. And that's why I took such interest in adding the food wherever I could, because I know when I read, I love all of the sensory details. And food is a really big one.
They were there too.
So that was the attraction for me with adding it. And the peach, the idea that the peach seed is also an important object, not just peaches as food, but the peach seed itself is such an important object in the book. And the peach seed monkey that is made from the peach seed is a very important object. So I actually own a peach seed monkey. I actually have two peach seed monkeys. One of them is broken and one of them is beautifully intact. My cousin Paul Hearns carved him for me and my sister Betty, my late sister Betty, when we were very young. And he gave them to us on one of his trips south. You know, when your northern cousin is coming to visit you in the South, it's a big old deal. They come with all of their northernness. And so he gave us these beautiful little charms that we didn't really know what to do with. So we just put them aside for years and years and years. The tail on mine broke. And then when we lost my sister Betty in a plane crash in 1997, we found hers in her jewelry box in her bedroom when we went to clear out all of her things. So in that moment, I'm looking at this beautiful little charm that I haven't seen in decades. Betty and I didn't talk about them. We never talked to Paul Hearns about them to get any information about why he carved it, who taught him how to carve it. But in that moment, as I was looking at it, and it was beautifully intact with rhinestone eyes. The one he gave me did not have rhinestone eyes, by the way. So it's like, what's up with that, cousin Paul? But Betty's was beautiful, completely intact, even though she was gone. So in that moment, as you say, about objects taking on incredible meaning, that's what happened for me in that moment. And then that was 97. Fast forward 10 years to 2007, when I started the book, the little monkey just jumped in the mix. I was figuring out where, who, why, all of the things you try to figure out to start a novel. And he just jumped in and said, I don't know how you're going to do it, but you got to put me in the book. It's up to you to figure that out. So I invented the tradition of the men carving peach seed monkeys and giving them to the boys when they come of age. That was all invention, does not exist in my family. I have not met another family that it existed in yet. But as everything unfolded, I saw all these other meanings that it had, like you were talking about, the history and everything else that comes with food or a peach seed. So that was the story behind that. I'm gonna check on the biscuits.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I'm not watching the clock. Is someone else? Do you use a timer? Did you turn on a timer?
Yeah, I have the timer on.
And while you're doing that, you have a question in the chat
Okay.
about the difference between drop biscuits and traditional biscuits.
Traditional biscuits. But there's so many different, I think drop biscuits are traditional, but if you're talking about rolled out biscuits that you would then cut with a cutter or a glass or something, I find drop biscuits a lot more flaky. And because you have not, when you roll out biscuits, you're manipulating the gluten and you're making the end result will be a little bit different texture than when you're making the drop biscuits, very little mixing goes on and no kneading or rolling out. So the gluten is not overworked. And I think that's why it makes such a flaky, wonderful biscuit. And of course, then the peaks are crispy and the inside's flaky. That's the difference. Now, my mother and my sister and I, this is how I first learned to make biscuits. We would just take a little bit of dough, roll it around, and then pat it and put them in the pan and pat them flat. So they all had a little fingerprints on them. That's another way to do biscuits. All kinds of ways.
There's a recipe used in Jamaica called for something called Johnny cakes.
Oh, yes.
It's quite similar, only you do pat them. They don't roll them out, I think. I think they just grab them like this and pat them.
Mm-hmm.
And some people in some countries, they make them with cornmeal. And that's a different, it's nice, but it's different. I tend to like the ones that are more like the drop biscuits because there's just some flavor.
Right.
But those are fried, so they're very nice, but they're different. They're different.
Yeah.
They're dense, they're fried.
You can't complain about fried bread. I mean, come on. So many cultures have fried bread. So Miranda, why don't you talk about drop biscuits? What has your experience been?
My experience has been mostly just eating them. No, I can't remember not knowing what they were. I was probably one of the first foods I ate, biscuits, grits. And I just love them. Every time I go home, that's what I request is breakfast for dinner usually. So biscuits, grits, eggs, salmon croquettes.
You're making me hungry. We got about 4 minutes to go here. It's looking good.
So I suspect everyone's read your book because I did glance at the chat at one point, which is dangerous on a telephone if you see me staring like this. But I see how people loved reading your book, but perhaps there are people who will see this who aren't so familiar. I love the concept and I loved that story, but that idea of the peach seed and how that ties together the elements in this family drama. Do you feel that you can say just a couple of words for people who don't know the novel?
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Thank you, Charmaine. I should do that. It's a family story, and it is also historical fiction because it flashes back to the civil rights movement, the Albany movement, which was something I was very intentional about elevating in the book because it has gone down in history as a failure because Dr. King came down from Atlanta to desegregate, but he admittedly, after all was over, said that the focus was too broad, needed to be more narrow in the focus and would have achieved better results. However, once Dr. King left and the cameras left and the news people left, the people in Albany never stopped working. And that is something I think is really important for people to realize, that movements don't just fizzle and go away. They are inside the people, and the people on the ground keep working, and they're still working. So I really wanted to elevate that part of Southwest Georgia history. And then the book flashes even further back to an imagined ancestral story for the current day family. Current day in the book is 2012. And we go back 200 years to the folks who are the ancestors for the current day folks, but they don't know about them. The reader gets to know. And I hope that the reader wishes they could tell the family, I know your people. I know everything about you. I know why you do that tradition with the peach seed monkey. I know all about it. But because of the wall of history, we're not able to tell people, we're not able to get those stories. So I thought it would be interesting to invent a story, what might have been for this family. So that's in a nutshell what everything is about. And then right in the middle of all of that, there's a beautiful love story between two almost 70-year-olds. And I've been hearing from people on the tour and in the book clubs that they really are happy to see an elder love story. It's not something you see a lot in fiction. So I don't want to say much more than that because I'll start giving things away, but thank you for asking. And I'm so happy that the book is resonating with folks and it's got its life out there. And speaking of that, speaking of books and their lives out there, I think it was, it was definitely Tayari Jones said this one time, that when you have more than one book, and you'll get to know this very soon, Ms. Charmaine, with Good Dirt coming out, your books take care of each other. And I love that idea that your books are out there and they're taking care of each other. So it came to my mind the other day that your books are biblings.
Siblings. Oh, I like that. And I wonder, so what did Tayari Jones mean with that? Just that they're kind of in conversation with one another?
Mm-hmm. They're out there and people, someone who hasn't read one will have read the other one and tell somebody about it. And people are comparing them. And they're just the idea that they're out there taking care of each other is just a beautiful thought, I think.
I just saw something pop up on the chat from Faith Adiele, the person that I met in the British Virgin Islands.
Right.
And what was it? Now I'm confusing trips. No.
It was British.
It was the British. Thank you. Do you know why? I actually went to the US Virgin Islands in the same year, and that's terrible. That'll sound like a terrible faux pas that I would confuse the two. But it's not that I would, it's that I saw a lot of the same people. That's what I love. I love seeing some of the same people in both festivals. Yeah. But Faith,
All right.
Faith mentioned being with, oh, look at that, it's ready. Faith, you mentioned being with Tayari Jones yesterday. Did you see that, Anita? Oh, look at that. Those are gorgeous.
Did I see what?
Faith mentioned being with Tayari Jones just yesterday.
Ah.
Yeah, I stayed at her house in Georgia. It's so funny.
Were you making biscuits?
Oh.
We were.
Why don't you show the biscuits again, Mama? You did it so quickly.
I did it too fast.
I didn't know there's just.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So you
I use a
yours.
spatula to separate
Yeah.
them.
You cut yours because I made a half portion. They were always separate. Look at that, beautiful. And you know what? I forgot about what you do. It's probably in the recipe. I forget what you do about it. You didn't have to add any fat, correct, to the skillet?
No.
Yeah, I didn't use a skillet. I used a baking pan. So
Yeah, I added nothing to the skillet because it's so well primed. This skillet's 60 years old or older, maybe older than that. So it doesn't need anything. And it has so much butter. There's so much butter in these biscuits that you don't need to. So Rob, you want a biscuit? You want a hot biscuit?
You don't have to ask me twice.
Come on over here and have a biscuit.
So now there you have your own personal test
Yes.
taster or taste tester.
Taste tester.
Yeah.
We need some
I'm
syrup.
curious about the texture. That was what makes me nervous, but it was again when I tried it, it worked out so well. And
Now these are a little flatter than usual because that's what happens when the batter is more moist than dry. They spread out and become flatter, which, you know, fine by me, they still taste wonderful. But if my batter had been a little bit more dry, then they would be standing up more and be more peaky and perky. But
so and
go
what
ahead.
are you putting? What are you putting on it?
This is mayhaw jelly.
Mayhaw?
Mayhaw. A mayhaw is a type of, come on in here. Let me see. You're using cane
I put
syrup.
a little cane patch syrup on
You have
mine.
to show that.
Yeah.
This is
Oh,
serious
nice.
syrup. It's almost like molasses. It's very,
Yeah.
very thick.
Wow, that's how you
Cane
eat
patch
it.
syrup. And
You
I'm
need
gonna
to
use
that.
the mayhaw. A mayhaw is like a wild cranberry. I've never even seen them growing. But excuse me, I have to bite into this biscuit.
Where are they supposed to grow though? They grow in the warmer climates?
No, they grow in Georgia in the summer. I don't know a lot about them, to tell you the truth, except that I love this mayhaw jelly. And this one is called Cedar Head Farms. It's out of Culprit, Georgia.
I'm writing that down.
Cedar Head.
Cedar Head
You
Farm.
can go to Mark's Melon Patch. I have his email address on the recipe. He has a farm stand, a great farm stand in Leesburg, Georgia, where I get all of my Georgia treats from. And he carries this in smaller jars and this larger jar.
How do you spell mayhaw?
Mayhaw, one word, mayhaw.
Thank you.
Mayhaw. I just want you to see how crispy the bottom is. Can you see this? Crispy bottom?
Yeah.
Very good.
So you like those with sweet stuff. I ended up just having mine plain. I loved that
Oh,
flavor.
really?
The flavor, yeah. But of course, one
True.
thing was.
True flavor. So here is, I don't know if I can get it close enough for you to see. This is the peach seed monkey.
It's lovely to see it. Look at that little guy. Or
You can see it, right? I don't know if you can see the
yeah. Is that so? The tail on that one is broken, you said?
no, this is the one that's intact. Mine is the one that this whole piece right here is missing on mine. But this was
Because
Betty's.
You
And
mentioned that this is the one that has rhinestone eyes. I can't
Yes. You can't really see it in this light. But on my website, I did a blog post about it. You can go there and read the blog post and see a photograph. But this is just a special little charm that a peach pit is really the pit. We know that, but it's very hard to carve. If you can imagine trying to carve this thing.
I can't imagine. That's the thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's very special.
Of course,
Okay. So
you
do you
make
have any
the-
more questions or?
Yes. How are we doing
Are people
time-wise?
are people breaking into their biscuits? Can we hear from some folks about your results and how happy you are? Or are you too busy eating to talk?
Mine are still baking. I'd forgotten to turn on my oven.
Oh no.
Patties look good. Those look great.
Ooh.
Patty made hers just came out. They look great.
Change the view to gallery.
Oh, you're
So-
on mute, Patty. We can't hear you, but it looks like you're happy with the result.
I need to move it
Oh,
so that
now
I can
I see everybody. Now I'm in the grid. I can see. Hi, so many people joined. That's nice.
There we go.
Well, I wish I could share my biscuits with everybody who's not having some, but.
It is making my mouth water. That's cliche to say that.
Oh,
Yeah, Patty's biscuits look great too.
I'd love to compare my biscuits to yours, Anita, and I'm sure I'd see what I'm supposed to aspire to.
but you know, there's kind of like a story that you tell. They're never the same twice. But we don't mind because they're still good.
Mhm.
And they're good with honey. Rob saying, yeah, but not as good. No, it's really a joy and a pleasure. This is the first, and what I'm hoping will be a limited series of doing this, baking biscuits and talking with wonderful authors about their books and how they use food. And I hope that this resonated with folks. It's because we all have to eat. A lot of us love to eat. So it's been fun. It's been fun to launch this and see what kind of reaction we get from people. And I was just so thrilled, Charmaine, that you said yes to make
Well,
this
thanks
work.
for asking. Thanks for asking. I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah, because we've just been on just Instagram friends for a while now and just going back and forth. And
Thank you, Anita. This was fun.
oh, hi, friend. How
Hi.
you doing? Tora,
Hi.
did you make biscuits?
No, I came in a little late. I had to do my swim class, but I got most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yeah, I have the recipe. I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can always share your recipe, your biscuit pictures
Okay.
online. Yeah, on Facebook or Instagram, just tag me and say, look what I did. I made the biscuits.
Okay.
Any other questions? We're going to wrap this up pretty soon. So I thank you all for joining. It's always a pleasure to talk about food and books and actually eat biscuits. Can't ever complain about that.
It's wonderful. In my notes, I don't know when I wrote this down, but I noticed that under the heading Anita's book, I had drop biscuits, but I also had, I mentioned this, the chicken and asparagus, grits,
Oh,
fried fish, shredded beef, corn, chocolate. Why did chocolate come up? Tangy tomatoes. That's another one that got my attention along with the catfish sandwiches.
Tomatoes?
Tangy tomatoes. So there are
What?
all sorts of foods in your book.
Yeah. Brunswick stew is the one you were describing, the beef and corn. Brunswick stew is a very famous dish from the South. And the asparagus was a fancy meal that Altavis made for Fletcher, and he thought truffle oil sounded like something you put on a carburetor. He was showing his lack of knowledge about certain things. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up, and I hope you enjoyed this. Get in touch and let us know what you felt, how you, what you'd like to see in the future with these. Maybe you'd like to be a guest sometime. Let me know. Thank you so much, Charmaine, for joining us all the way from Rome. And is it still storming there?
No, it's died down a bit. I was telling Anita that Rome has horrific thunderstorms, nothing like what we're seeing right now in Florida and the Carolinas, but
Right.
but we do get pretty horrific storms. They just go by very quickly. They're not hurricanes. They are like sudden bursts, thunderstorms, sometimes with little tornadoes. So we had a bit of that today, but all well that ends well.
Yes. And we are waiting for our rainy season to start here in Northern California. We are ready. We've been having heat waves after heat waves. So
you need the rain.
We need the rain. Send the rain, please. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Wonderful. Hello to everyone.
See you again. I saw that Paula Palmer was on. Thank you, Paula, for joining. She's helped me a lot.
My pleasure. Yay. Joining from Brooklyn.